Okay, so welcome to the 29th workshop, which is a big review. So this is my mentor or teacher, my first one I had, which was just over 2 years ago. And unfortunately, she passed away about a year ago. And so I do this in memory of her, and she used to do classes like this, and I used to attend. So she was just so worried no one would continue to keep machine knitting alive, and she saw that I had a passion. I stayed with her every time I'd go to San Diego. That's where I grew up. I live in Brisbane now, Australia. And so yeah, I do this all in her memory, and again to pay it forward for what she taught me. So I've mentioned the reason I'm recording is because this recording will be put up on the online course, and as well as the other ones, and up there will be all the patterns that I show you today, as well as beginner resources starting from the very basic. So I just saw a review today again, by Calvert. It is a good course, even if I say so, but it's lovely to hear others love it. So there's an online course review post in my page if you want to go and read some of those comments. Okay, so I'm going to give you actually a quick course tour just so you can see. This is on my actual business. This is just my hobby. Essential Spending Planner, but I use that platform to store all my course plus I have all my business courses. So it's Machine Knitting for a Dummy, and it starts out with my journey, how things work, your journey, and also this is a good one, the characteristics needed to be a machine knitter that endures, that continues, that doesn't get overwhelmed, and to keep it simple at first. How to be better organized in your machine knitting, the types of knitting. I get a lot of circular knitting machine people joining, which I started with before flatbed, and so it just kind of gives the history of that, of knitting and all different types. I talk about all the different brands. Now, just as a disclaimer, I do not have a pass up. I have lots of other machines, but I don't have a pass up, so I can't give specific things for pass up, but generally the basic techniques are the same. How to set up your machine. Now, ribber, we haven't used the ribber bed yet, because to me, a beginner should not have the ribber on their machine. You should take that ribber off so that you just master your single bed first. Plus, when you have the ribber, you only have this much of a place to even see your stuff. And so as a beginner, a ribber is not something you would go straight to until you master the single bed, or at least know the basics of the single bed. Talking about yarn, the terminology. So all of you who are here for the first time today, I give you a gift of a list, the terminology, knitting machine terminology, as well as a glossary which has photos, which will just kind of show you about all those things that you hear about and what it is, as well as my own tension gauge swatch schematic and instructions. Then it goes on in all the different ways to cast on, even though I say as a beginner, keep it simple, keep to, basically E-wrap and a quick cast on. Different types of stitches, different types of bind-offs, increasing, decreasing hems and waistbands, necklines, edging, including no-roll edging, partial knitting or short row knitting, which is shaping, making shapes, creating and reading schematics. I'm really big on schematics. I'm very visual, so I teach you how to create and how to read schematics, how to finish them off, your mattress stitch and everything, and then maintenance, troubleshooting, and then in module 38 is all the patterns that we've done so far. Okay, so each of those you would click into that, and it may have a tutorial in there as well, and the pattern, and usually the pattern is for both standard and bulky. If you're on a mid gauge, I just recommend you doing the bulky pattern. and so forth. And so we're kind of down here, and there's a few there. I haven't added more of what we'll be doing in the future. And then the last module is all the recordings of all the past ones. I've been doing this since August 13th, so this is my 29th week. And so all the recordings are there for you to re-watch, and for some of them is just to watch and knit along, especially when you're doing like the top-down raglan sweater. You can just watch it and knit it as you go. So I just wanted to show you just what the course entails if you're interested. Of course, these are free. You can come to these, and but that's a great resource for you. And so if you see anything today that you think, ooh, I want that pattern, then the course. So the course is only $20 Australian, which is about $14 American, and about 10 British pounds. So it's a low cost, and you can cancel at any time. So okay, so I'm just going to go through quickly. If you have any questions or queries or comments about the different projects, let me know. Just remember that every one of these projects is in the online course. This first one is free, and it's in the file section of the group. So you'll see as I go through that some things are free in the file section of my group. The first one was a soap sack. Now, yes, you don't need to use it as a soap sack if you don't, but it's more the making of it. It's small and quick and great for a first project. The things that you learn in there is how to cast on, how to do eyelets, how to just knit, how to do I-cords. Yeah, it's just a very quick one to do, and recommended in cotton, because if you're using it to wash your face or whatever, then it's nice to have cotton. So all my patterns I write very simply to read. You won't find any paragraphs in my patterns, because I don't like paragraphs in written patterns, that when they're telling you 4 or 5 things to do in that paragraph. I like dot points, and so mine are all rewritten very simply, as well as I will have a schematic. So I created this schematic, and we'll talk about the symbols a little bit further on. And so I'm very visual. I want to see what I'm doing. I want to see the shape. I want least amount of words. And so that's why I like and teach schematics. So in the file section, you will find the soap sacks, both for standard and for bulky. Again, if you're on a mid-gauge, just always go the bulky one. The second one we talked about taking notes. So if you don't have a piece of paper or a notebook, I always say for people who come regularly to the class, have a notebook and take notes. Even if you decide to go into the course, amazing what little things you can pick up that it will be easy to find in your notes. So that week we talked about the foundations, the terminology of machine knitting, as well as the glossary. So the glossary has pictures, so it's, you might have heard, you know, what's fair isle? Okay, it will have a picture of fair isle and the different things. What's a garter carriage? And so that is good. And these are 2 of the things that I am gifting all those who are here for the first time. This is part of my course, as well as some tension swatch ones that I made. So if you are interested in getting a copy of those, that gift, please just either private message me in my messenger or put it in the comments in the chat box now, and that will be sent out after this workshop, just as a thank you for coming. So we talked about yarn, and yarn's really important depending on what machine you have. So the one on the left is more designed for your bulky machines, you know, your skeins. Now there are some that are like baby yarn and sock yarn. Those are fine for your standard. But generally your standard will use cone yarn. You can use this on the bulky. You'll just put a few of them together, 2 or 3 of them together, and then you can do that on your bulky. But the biggest key that I say is you push out a needle on your machine and you see the width of it, okay? And you take a yarn that you want to use and you lay it up against that needle. If it is way bigger than that needle, then it is not designed for that machine. If it's smaller, then that's great. So that's a really quick way to know whether that's going to be good on your machine. When people are getting jams and everything, it's generally when they send me a photo, they are using way too thick of a yarn on their standard machine or even on their bulky. Now on the bulky, I have some really thick chunky ones that I've done, but I use it, if I'm doing a blanket, I just use every other needle. Then it's fine. Okay, and you can do the same with the standard. But if you're actually following a pattern that's telling you what to do, that might not be the best. So yeah, so yarn, keep an eye out at secondhand shops for yarn. I went to Salvation Army or wherever. They had them $2 each. I came home with 8 bags. So some people just, they don't even know where to put these things, so they give them to secondhand, and you can pick them up really cheap. Because to buy them new, you can be paying up to $50, $60. Okay, that second week we also learned the drink bottle cover, which is the same as a soap sack. It's just wider and higher. But it introduced changing colors, okay, which is really fun. And with that, I teach how to weave in your ends so that at the end you don't have all these little tassel things that you have to weave in. So I actually weave in my ends as I go when I'm changing colors or when I stop a yarn and finish a next skein so that I don't have those at the end. So that was the second one. And these are just basic things that you learn when you do a drink bottle cover. So each project has a new technique that I teach. The third one was the cast-on rag. So a cast-on rag can be used instead of waste yarn. There's my waste yarn. Okay, I'm never going to knit anything this color. So this is my waste yarn. It's always contrast to anything I use. If you don't want to use waste yarn and want to have something that's reusable, that's where a cast-on rag comes. Okay, so you're hanging your weights on that as opposed to your knitting. And the way to use a cast-on rag is you hang those little needles. You're hanging them on every needle, and then you use one row of ravel cord, because that's your separator row. That's the purpose there, is that when it's time to take this cast-on rag off, you just pull that ravel cord, which is a row on itself, before you start your main knitting, and it just drops off. Don't do what I do and forget the ravel cord, because then you'll have to cut it off, and it is definitely then not reusable. So, but that is
So when you take,
yes,
I have a question. When you take that cast on rag off, do you have live stitches?
Well, no, because you're usually using that, you only take it off once you've done something with those live stitches. So if you're hanging a hem, for example, on a skirt, you could, instead of doing this first and then a row of ravel cord and then your main yarn, you can just use that. Once you've hung the hem, because they were live, then once you hang it, at that point you can take
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that always works with if you have open stitches. Okay, and so with that one we learn increasing and decreasing. That one's done kind of on the biased, and cotton is a really good one to use for that. It just gives it a bit of sturdiness. We also learned basic cables. So the 4-stitch and the 6-stitch cable. Now in the course, in the group, in the files, you'll see, I think there's something there with the instructions of the cables. I have a technique that Carolyn taught me that for the 6 cable. Now cables are really simple. That's why we taught it very early. I don't know where all my things are. Okay, so basically a cable is you're knitting, and then at a certain point you take 2. These are all needles that are right next to each other. You're taking this one and this one, you're taking them both off, you're transferring onto here, and all you're doing is swapping it and put it back on. So it's just making a twist. And then you knit so many rows, and then you do it again. Now, when you're doing this with the 3-prong and 3-prong, because you have to move that quite a far away, it can be kind of tight, and you might think that you're going to break your needles, which you, if you do it too tight, you could. And I think I might have it here. Yes, so 6 needles. So say if you're doing 8 rows between your twists, then on row 6, 2 rows before, you'll bring the needles next to the cable into work and knit 2 rows, and then you'll drop them when it's time to do it. Because usually when you do a cable, each side of the cable you're having needles not in working position. But if you just, yeah, and so it's doing that so it gives it more ease in that yarn, so that when you transfer it, it's so much easier. So anyway, that is in the files, those simple cables. So yeah, you'll impress people really early on with cables. Okay, the next one was knitting carriage parts. So if you don't have a machine manual for your manual, if you just got it and there wasn't one that came through, that's okay, because MK manuals will have it. You can print it and put it in a notebook. Dip your bucket. In other words, there is a lot of information in there. And so use your manual. I mean, they do take you progressively through quite quickly. They'll get you doing Fair Isle and stuff. If you're not fine with that, at least use it to get the basic, how to cast on, how to knit, and the basic things, and what the parts of your machine are. But not all machines really, or not all manuals really explain cast on or bind off. I've heard that from many of them. So this is one of my machines, and so what I do is I have this printed on a piece of paper with this, and it's, when I'm using that machine, it's there on the wall next to the machine, so that it reminds me, because I have multiple machines, what things do. So that's a tip that I recommend doing. The Singer, if you have a Singer 323, 321, 326, probably 329, that has a lot of levers and things like that that can be quite confusing of what's what. They also have you do something first when you're casting on, and then you have to change it for when you start to knit. So I actually wrote that on, and I have that printed, and that's again on top. So if you have a Singer and you're interested in that, I can send you that. You can just put a message in the chat box. Then we have the LK150 and what they are. My Brother 230, which is a very basic. This was my first machine, and then I now regularly use and teach on my 260. So, and then we have the 940, which is my electronic. So these are just helpful just to remind myself what they do. We then talked about tension swatches, and let me just continue because I don't want to play this video. Okay, so these are tension swatches. I do 2-in-1. I do use it for a tension swatch as well as a gauge swatch. What is a tension swatch? A tension swatch is to find out what number on what tension dial on your carriage you want to use, what it produces with the yarn you're going to use. So you're going to make a sweater, you're going to use your sweater and knit some rows. So here basically I would cast on, after a couple rows, I would have my thing on like number 2, or whatever number you want to start with. I would put 2 eyelets after a couple rows, so I know that this section is tension 2. If you don't put that, you will not remember unless you are so much better at memory than me. So you'll put in eyelet form the number that the tension dial is that knitted that area. I do at least say 30 rows. Then I do a contrast. Then I go up to like number 3 tension dial, and I do that. And so then from there I feel and see what feel I want for my sweater. So we've talked about when we taught pants. With pants you're going to want more of a tighter knit, a lower tension dial number, where a sweater you're going to want it a little bit more than that because you're wearing it and you're doing lots of movement. So once I do my tension swatch, whichever one I have, I actually have enough room in there to actually get a measuring tape, my ruler, and measure to at least 2 inches so I can get a gauge out of that. Okay, so on Twisted Yarn's website you can print out, Mary Matz runs that, they have a couple articles about how to create a tension swatch and how to create a gauge swatch. Okay, workshop 5 was drop stitches and getting things caught around the gate pegs. Okay, can anyone share and in fact I think that was the question, what are the factors that lead to a dropped stitch? Would anyone like to tell what they learned?
Weight.
Weight, exactly. If you don't have weight holding your yarn down, if it's unevenly weighted. If it's unevenly weighted, then you can have it catch around the gate peg. Okay? And so weight is a huge factor on that. Okay, so this is, I'm not going to play that. The Knitting Machine School, she has some really good cast on basic stuff, how to maintain your machine, just really basic. She doesn't do it anymore. I've tried to message her because I just love her videos, but she has a lot of good short, precise, professional videos that explain that. And then we went on to casting on. Okay, so there's basically 2 types that I use. The quick cast on, which is if I want open, just a quick one, which basically is you're bringing out every other needle, you're putting yarn in your feeder, you're not having to E-wrap on, and you just knit across every other needle. So it's only on every other needle. You then at that point you get your weight comb, you hang it, then you immediately bring all those non-working needles into working position, put your weights, and then continue to knit. So it kind of leaves a big loop at the front, which if you're doing a sample or something, or if you're like a hem, I generally will use that technique when I'm hemming something because I don't necessarily have to hang every stitch for it to be a hem. So that's a really quick one and a good one. Then there's the E-wrap cast on. The E-wrap cast on goes very well with the needle bind off or others that look similar, but the E-wrap is the most common that I use most of the time. That and the quick cast on. So you'll be able to see both of those in her videos. There's also the double E-wrap cast on, which makes it a bit more pronounced. This is single, this is double, so it's a lot more pronounced. If you're adding multiple needles in one row, then you would do the double E-wrap just to make it a bit more thicker and sturdier. Okay, so this is a double yarn quick E-wrap. So this is one style I put on the bottom of my skirts or dresses. And so I'm using 2 strands of yarn. I have one coming from the mast and one from the floor. And I put those into my feeder, every other needle, run across, and then I take out that second yarn because I only need that for the cast on row. As you can see, 2 here, but then from here on it's just the 1. And then I start knitting, okay? And the key that I found, because blocking, it's really hard to block this type of edge. You can have this on the edge of your sweater or whatever, but it's really hard to open up all those when it's off the machine. So while it's on the machine and it's stretched and they're all look nice, then I just get a spray bottle of water and I just put something behind it so it doesn't hit my machine. You don't want water on metal. And I just do a light spray around it just to make it damp, and then I keep knitting. By the time I finish whatever I'm knitting, that's dried and it's self-blocked itself. And then it comes out looking really nice. So that's just a tip that I created. I'll do anything to make it simpler and save time. Then there's the latch bind off, which is with this. This is your latch hook. And that's the most common way. You can do it left-handed, right-handed, and she has some videos on that as well. So that is using your latch hook. And for one that you don't want to have tight, you do it around the gate peg. So as you're casting off, it's still hanging on your machine rather than hanging down. And by doing it around the gate peg allows your stitches, your bind off stitches, to be evenly spaced and not too tight. Because if they're tight, it's going to gather, and you may not want whatever you're taking off to gather at the top. Okay. Just keep going. Okay, and then there's the waste yarn and bind off. So sometimes you want to finish something and you want to hand knit it, the hem or the rib, the neckline, whatever. Then you take it off on waste yarn. And yeah, so you just basically take your main yarn out, put the waste yarn in, knit, say 10 rows, and then just take that out and knit it across, and you have that. So that is holding the live stitches that you can do whatever you want with after. This is a good thing to do if, for example, you're doing a big project and then there's some little project you want to do, and but your knitting's on the machine of this big project, then you can actually waste yarn it all off, do your little project, and then rehang all those live stitches again. So that's another way to use your waste yarn. Any questions so far? Okay, so the next one is the ravel cord. So there's two purposes for ravel cord. One is as a separation row, one is as a marking row. Okay, so so this is a folded hem. I guess that will come up, the folded hem. So this is a mock hem, or it's just a doubled over hem. So if you want 10 stitches deep for a hem, then you have to knit 20 stitches, and you're going to actually pick that up and hang it. And that's where the waste yarn comes in really handy, to see that first row. Because if you have this contrasting color, you'll easily see the first row of your knitting, especially that cast on row. And so you will then hang it. Now a tip here is when you do any type of hem, usually if you're doing a rib, this is a smaller tension than your main project. Okay, the body. This might be 1 or 2 numbers lower in tension dial because it's more designed to hug. But for a hem, this is all the same. But if you do have it a lower tension, then once you hang it, you need to turn your tension dial up at least to body tension, the main tension, or even another one. And why? That will prevent this indent that you see here, going from here to there. I don't like people to see that, oh, there's the beginning of her hem. And if the more indent, the more they'll see that. So in the files, again, is the folded stockinette hem. Instructions of how to just do a basic hem. Okay, then there's also the picot hem. Okay, picot hem is kind of like making an eyelet. So you, or say you're wanting to do 20, you want to see 20 and the picot's down the bottom. Well, you need to do, or say you want to see 10. You have to knit 20, but on row 10, halfway through, you're going to transfer every other needle, as you can see here. Every other needle's transferred to the stitch to the right. You then will immediately bring all needles into working position. You don't want to keep knitting every other needle, and it will create this picot hem. So very cute on little girls or women's hems on skirts or sweaters. Then there's the folded waistband, which is the same as a hem, but it's the opposite. You're doing it last. Okay, so if you've done your hem here, now this hem is not a folded one. This looks like a reformed stitch hem to make it look like they did it on the river, which I'll show you shortly. Anyway, you do your hem, you knit your body, and then you get to the part where you need to start knitting your rows for your bands. So say for example she wanted 15 rows for her band, so she's going to knit 30 rows. That first row she knits, she's going to decrease the tension down one or two so that it kind of hugs in a bit. And once she transfers, like here there is no transferring, she's just doing a stockinette. But what you will do is you will add ravel cord to that first row. This is in addition to keeping your main yarn in there. So you keep the main yarn. So this is the second purpose of ravel cord, is to marking row. There's a few ways to do it. I do it the really quick and simple way. So ravel cord is usually a nylon cord, so it's easy to pull out when it's time. You will put that in with your main yarn. So you have 2 in the feeder, and you're going to knit across just 1 row and then take that out of the feeder. So it's only the 1. And when it's time to fold it up, it's going to be so much simpler to see which row and stitches you're going to hang. So waistband skirts are very easy. I've made skirts. I actually have one on now. It's just a rectangle. I don't have much, my waist and hips are around the same. Even if they might be maybe 3 or 4 inches more, but because knitwear has stretch, that's fine. So it's a really quick and easy one to make. And then there's the no roll edge. This is my favorite edge. Basically, where you don't want that. So I usually do this once I get to the armpit of a sweater, if I'm just doing a block short sleeve sweater, or no sleeve sweater actually. Once I get to the armpit, from there on up to the thing, I do this no roll thing. And so basically you can see there it's kind of doing a bias. It's going the other way, those stitches, which is what's preventing it from rolling. So you basically transfer the 3rd stitch onto the 2nd, and that leaves the 3rd stitch empty. So then you take the bump or the purl bump of the 4th stitch and you put it in the 3rd. So then they all have a needle, and needle 1 is always untouched. You never touch this edge needle. You don't want it doubled. You don't want to do anything to that, because that is your stitch. If you're hemming this to someone or you're seaming it, you want those stitches to be, as I call, virgin. You don't want them to have any manipulation to them. So that is a really good no roll edge. Okay, then we talked about a folded hem using the cast on comb. Now this is a really fun and quick way. Now this is a hat you can make. Actually, it's a 7-minute hat. I put 10 just to not overwhelm you so much. I mean, it might take you 20 minutes first time. But this is just a basic hemmed hat. You can see the hem, folded hem. But when you cast on, I do a quick cast on, which is every other needle. I just put the yarn in, every other needle's out, put it across, and then I bring all the needles into work. But when I hang my comb, usually when you hang your comb, here's just an odd one. Usually when you're hanging your comb, the comb part is facing towards the machine, okay? But when you hang it with this, you have them facing towards you. So you're putting it in backwards, your comb. You're going to knit this. And once you are ready to hang them, you're just going to bring out every other needle, because that's what's on. And you're just going to basically, I have a bar something heavy, you just put a bar in the center. You're going to lift your comb, and you can put them all up onto the needles all at the same time. But you can only do it if it's the comb's reverse. So that's what makes it a 7-minute hat, is because that's the time-consuming thing of making a hat, is hanging all the stitches for the handle. So, welcome. Someone just joined in. Welcome. We're just doing a review. So this is the charity hat using the using a comb cast on. So if you do any charity work or anything, this is a great little project. So again, I always draw schematics for any pattern that I see or write. I'll have a schematic which tells me exactly what to do, because I will look at that as opposed to a written pattern. So that's one of the students made that hat, and a few more. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second just to see who else has joined us. Jessie Hill, welcome. Jessie, can you just unmute yourself and tell us where you're from? If you're there.
Hi, I'm Jessie. Yes, I'm from Minnesota.
Minnesota, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. So I have a free gift for everyone who's come for the first time. So if you haven't, just put your email in the chat box, or you can PM me, Sherry Dumbrell, and I will send that out. That will be some knitting terminology, as well as a knitting glossary with pictures, and my 2-in-1 tension gauge swatch. So if you want to do that, that would be lovely. So welcome, Jessie. So we're just reviewing some of the projects we've done over the last 6 months, and so we'll just continue. All these are available on the online course, but some things are free in the Facebook group, in the files. So like I said before, I am big on schematics. I love schematics. The first schematic, and I'll show you it when I get to it, is the first one that on day 2, my teacher, Carolyn, said, we're going to make a sweater, a top-down raglan sweater. And I'm like, okay. So she had this 1-page schematic, and it looked like Chinese to me. And I just listened to her. You know, she's saying, see, we're here. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't understand. But anyway, I just was a good follower. She told me what to do, and I did it. And so it's been my challenge to understand that schematic, which I do now. And we actually taught it in January. We did that sweater. And in February, we did the cardigan, the top-down cardigan. So I teach you how to read schematics. I teach you how to write schematics, because then you're not having to, if you see a cute sweater, which is just a classic round neck or a boat neck sweater or V-neck, you can draw your own schematic and put your own measurements in it, and you don't need to buy someone's pattern. So this is 2 pieces of that schematic for the top down. When we do schematics, we always go from the bottom up. That's how we read. Okay, when we read a book, we go from the left to the right and then back again. But schematics, we read from the bottom up. Because this is a top-down sweater, that's why this is the neck area. That's why it's upside down. Okay? And here we start at the sleeve and we go down. And so all those things to you may not make sense, but I teach you in that pattern, in the very simplified written pattern of this, how to understand that. There's symbols for schematic patterns, and so these are basic symbols that are used. And so again, the less words in a diagram, the better. Okay, this is the designer swatch that those who are here for the first time will get as a gift if you give me your email. So I can email that to you, and this is just a simple schematic of how to have a tension or tension swatch, but you can also be a lazy gauge swatcher and use it as that, as long as you have at least 30 rows with each. So this is color number 1. This is color number 2. That's the line that separates it. These are the tension eyelet. You're going to put the eyelets of what the tension is for that section so that you know. Okay, and then RC is row counter. Knit 2 rows of your contrast, and then you will take the feel of that tension, of the different tension numbers on your machine, and you will decide with that yarn which one you like the feel of best and which one your machine was happy with. You're not going to want to have your carriage struggling to knit on a tight tension and knit an outfit. You will just give up. Okay, so it has to be happy, and you need to like the feel as well. Okay, then there's partial knitting and short rows. Now this is something that I was so confused for so long. And you know why? Because I didn't really read, we know how we have words in the English language, and we wonder why it's called that, but when you really, because we just use them all the time, but when we actually look at the word and the basis of the word, it actually explains what the word's about, what it is. This partial knitting, short rowing, which I mainly had heard short rowing, I'm thinking, what is this? I did not understand it, but now I do, and if you look at those words, when you're knitting, say the full length of your, or say if you have 50 needles you're knitting, going all across, that's not a short row. You're knitting the whole thing. But if you only want to knit 20 of them or 25 of them, then you're partial knitting that row. And so those rows, if you keep doing that, and to short row you have your carriage and hold. So all the ones you don't want to knit are out in hold position, which is usually pulled out. And so you're only knitting shorter rows. So, took my dummy brain to really understand that. So here is if you add one needle at a time, or one needle every row, you're going to get a really steep. Okay, see how it's going from little, and then they're getting shorter as you go up. Okay, if you do multiple rows, or take multiple rows out of work, then it's going to do a more gentle slope. So partial knitting and short rowing is making shapes. Your machine is making a rectangle or a square. Okay, but if you want to do any type of shaping, a circle, a triangle, whatever, then you're going to be using partial knitting and short rows, which is the same thing, just called different. So here's a few things that you would use short rowing for. Well, socks, your heels, that is short rowed. These are short rows. Same with the toes, they're short rows. Okay, here you can see the rows get shorter and then they get bigger. And it all has to do with whether your needles are in working position or out of working position, in hold position. And your carriage is always on hold. Here, there's some shorter rows here. A dart. Okay, if you put a dart in a sweater, that is short rows. In our pants that we just learned, just under the waistband to give us a bit more room in the back side of our pants and to make the waistband a bit higher than the front, which usually it is with pants, and easy to know which is the front and the back, we did short rows. And then you can also make circles or a pinwheel blanket or whatever using short rows. So this is the top-down raglan sweater that we did in January. And you can see here these little triangles. Okay, these are short rows. So we started up here because this is the top-down sweater. So we started here with like one needle in work. All the other ones were out of work. And our carriage was in hold. Then we added the next couple, every other row we added in a couple more needles, to the point where we got down where all our needles were in work. And then we just continued knitting. Okay, so any type of shape or triangle is short rowing. These pants, great example. These are monster pants. Where the red is, that is all short rowed. Do you see how it's narrower and then it gets deeper and then it gets narrower again? That is short rows. So when you short row, you put your machine whether it's a lever or a hold button, you put it into hold so that you're only knitting the ones you want to knit. So the project that we did is a washcloth. This is a drink coaster, but it's the basically same thing. We do 6 wedges of short rowing, and then we Kitchener it together. Okay, so you can make a drink coaster, a washcloth, a dish. This is what I use to wash my dishes. I have these. Again, cotton is the best thing to do these in. Anything that you're going to be getting wet and using, it just wears so much better. And you can even start with so many more needles and do a baby blanket that's like a pinwheel. So short rowing is crucial to understand, especially if you start doing garment making. Then we learned how to increase stitches, and there's the simple increase. Now, it's not a common one that we use, but this sweater, do you see these holes here down in the seam? Those are simple increases. Okay, they leave a loop. So unless the pattern tells you that, then you generally don't use a simple increase, which is just pulling out a new needle and start knitting. Okay, but that will, you can see here, it's leaving these big, long kind of loops. So the other way is an increased full fashioned. Again, this was something that's like full fashion. What does that mean? Okay, why would they have called it that? We have to use our brains, okay, and think, okay, maybe because it's more fashionable to not see where you increased. And so this is, you can do it so it does not show you. You can't tell where you're actually increasing. Okay? So to do a full fashioned increase, you're wanting to increase, so it's always on an outer needle and usually opposite the carriage. You're going to bring in a new needle. Then you're going to transfer the outside stitch to that needle. Then you have an empty needle. Okay, we need to do something there. We don't want an eyelet, so we have to pick the purl bump or the crossbar of the next needle to the right, and we hang it on here, on that. So everyone now has a stitch. And now you've increased, but the full fashioned is this outside stitch is single. It's not, it's like a virgin stitch. It hasn't been touched. Yes, it's been moved over, but it's not a double stitch. So if you have to seam up, do the mattress stitch, it's going to be an easy one to a good stitch. Okay, then there are multiple increases. If you need to, do a big increase in one row, then you can do just an E-wrap or a double E-wrap. So here's just a regular E-wrap. You would do carriages on the right. So you have to do this on the side your carriages, and you would then knit that across. Or a double E-wrap, you're going to take the yarn and we're going to go under the second needle first, not the first like we did a single. Then you're going to cross it back and put it in front of the latch and manually push that through, so that gives it a double E-wrap. You can see here this as opposed to this. Okay, it has a little bit of a different look, but it's a bit more stable for the double E-wrap. There is another way, which is using like an I-cord, and which we use in the sweater. Okay, and then there's decreasing stitches. Okay, and there again we can decrease so it's a big slope or a little slope, depending on how many rows between your decreases. With knitting, when you're knitting one way, it's putting the yarn up and over the needle. That's it. That's not a full stitch. That's a half a stitch. Then when you knit back, it's going to do the crossbar. That completes a stitch. So usually when you do any increasing or decreasing, it will always generally be every 2 rows, so that you can actually finish that stitch before you do another one. So to decrease, you would use your 2-prong tool, and you're going to take the 2 outside ones and you're going to move them over. Okay? As opposed to taking a 1-prong tool, moving the outside to the next one. Because what does that do? That ruins our rule, which we want the outside stitch to be a single one. We don't want it to be a double stitch or anything. So by using a 2-prong tool, when I move it over, the double stitch is on the second stitch in, not the first stitch. Okay? And with pants or anything, you can, let's see if I can see, I don't know if you can see on these pants because I just stitched these up last night. Okay, right here, I don't know if you can see here, you can see there is an increase there because I can see one needle, one stitch that's kind of going diagonal, okay? But generally, no one would pick that up. You know, but no one's going to do that because of this type of increase. Then there's this 2-step increase, and what that does is you use both the 1 and the 2, and you do it in 2 steps. Where that one was 1 step, you just use your 2-prong and move it over. But this one, you're going to go to the 3rd needle, move it to the 2nd. So now that has 2 stitches. Then you're going to get your 2-prong needle and move those over. Okay? Again, there's a little bit of different look, but that is the full-fashioned 2-step. So basically understanding how to cast on, how to knit, increasing, decreasing, you can do a lot. So that's just moving them over to their thing. Then there's the reform stitch. Like I said on that skirt down the bottom, she just knitted, if she wanted 10 rows for her hem, she knitted 10 rows. She did not hang it. She then went, and this is an example, but she went and reformed those stitches. Okay, so she would have put her thing in down here. You used your latch hook. She would have put that in that first one. She would have dropped that stitch so it laddered down, and she would then just stitch that up. And what that does is it makes it look like a purl stitch because you're looking at the wrong side, which is or it makes it look like a knit stitch because you are looking at the purl side. But when you turn it over, of course, it's the knit stitch, and these become the purl indent. Okay, so that's how you could do a rib without using your ribber that is single thickness, or mock rib as I recommend for beginners initially. Then there's the twisted stitch. This is just taking 2 1-prong tools, and it's a mini cable. It's basically just swapping them. Okay, and you can get, and depending on which way you swap them will be which way it twists. So you could alternate or just do it all the same way. So that is a thing. And here's just a little diagram of, this means you would twist to the right, this means you would twist to the left. So this was just a little pattern for the front just to practice reform stitches, to practice the twist stitch, and to practice increasing, decreasing, decreasing, and decreasing. So it was just an easy one. And that's what it looks like. So with hand manipulating with your tools, you can make some really lovely patterns. Okay, so one of the students, she was practicing decreasing, and so she thought, ooh, I'm going to make a Santa hat. Okay, so, and when you decrease, of course, you have to decrease on both sides so that it's even. Okay, and then we did the pumpkin, cabled pumpkin. Okay, so cables we've learned. We had just learned reform stitches, which are these ones. And so this is a pattern. It's in the file section, the cabled pumpkin. It's one I saw on the internet, but it was just, you know, there was no instructions. So I created some instructions, And so they are there in the file section. So I have the written instructions, which I wrote, as well as using Stitch Fiddle, which you can create things, showing where, what row and what, it has the stitches down here and the rows here, and the dots are reform stitches, and these are my cable twists. So that's a really fun one to make. Okay, then workshop 10 was just a review. I was actually at my parents' then, and so I had reviewed that. Now, is there any questions or comments thus far? Otherwise, at the end, we'll have time as well. So hopefully this is giving you a good overview of what we've taught, what kind of things we teach, and what things you can easily get in the online course. So then the next week we taught eyelet lace. So this is basically the same as eyelets. You transfer one needle to the next, bring all the needles back and work, and you knit across. So we did one here. We did one here. Then we knitted across, and then once we came back, then we made eyelets either side of that. Knitted across, came back, and then we did that one again. And that just created a little posy. And so this is a skirt that I made. I was going on a cruise with my husband a few years ago. Yeah, so that's a really easy project to do. Now this is felting. So felting, you have to use 100% wool, and you knit something larger than you want it because, so for example, this is this. I did some short rowings on the sides that made it like that. But that's what it was prior to me putting it in a pillowcase and tying it up with a rubber band, putting it in a hot washing machine with a couple tennis balls to help agitate it even more, and going through a cycle. And when you take it out, it looked like this. It was felted. Okay? So this is a cozy, bowl cozy. I use that. Then what I did, as you can see, that's kind of a shape of a bowl. I put that over the back of a bowl, upside down bowl, and let that dry. And so now that is what I use, and I love using my cozy whenever I'm having soup or whatever. It's a hot pad, but it also keeps what's in there hot as well. It insulates it. So you can do this for socks. If you imagine, this kind of looks like a toe of a sock. You can do socks and then felt them, or slippers, more like slippers, and felt them. But of course you have to do it a bit bigger, and I'm not sure exactly the percentage, but you knit it bigger because it will shrink and felt itself. And that makes it more dense and warmer. And I went to a museum end of last year of all old military things in the States, and I saw their jackets, and they're all felted, because I had never really thought of that. But all the old military jackets, they're all made out of wool to keep them warm, but they're felted, which keeps them even more warm because there's no little gaps that air can get through. And same with the blankets. I'm sure some of you have felt a wool blanket, one of those felted wool. They're not comfortable, but they're very warm. Okay, so this is the tension swatch again, the tension gauge swatch. So in these areas is where you would measure whatever one you liked. You would measure for your gauge, the stitches per inch and the rows per inch. That is so important to do a gauge swatch and to know that with that yarn on that machine, so that you can create something that's wearable, that's going to fit you. So there again, that's the thing that you'll be receiving, and I color code all the different things for the gauges. So here's the instructions for the different types of gauge machines. So there's my granddaughters in their skirts. That's a skirt I made on my standard and you can kind of see down there, that's my double E-wrap cast on that I created, and yeah, that's just a block skirt. I didn't have any increases or decreases whatsoever in that. Just a waistband and that. So very simple. Again, there's lots of different lengths. I prefer about this length, the T length. Then we did the block neck sweater. Now this is probably what I'm going to teach next week. So this is a basic block sweater. There is no increasing, there is no decreasing. It's just a rectangle, and the sleeves are also just a rectangle basically. And there's no increasing or decreasing. So it's a more of a wide, which is more of a stylish one anyway. For the neckline, which usually for sweaters, that's the hardest part. It is a 2x2 rib, mock rib. So basically once I got to here, I transferred, so every set of 2 needles were out of work. And it goes all the way across the neckline, all the way to the shoulder. So it gives you a nice shoulder. And I'll just show you, it's just behind me. I don't know if you can see. It's on my mannequin. And so it's just a really nice, easy sweater that I have the schematic for, and it's a nice one to start with schematics and just doing your simple measurements and putting it in there. So we will discuss that next week. So again, there's schematic symbols, which you will become familiar with. Now, one thing I always say, and one thing I would have saved a lot of misunderstanding or not understanding, is if I would have used my brain. When we tend to learn something new, we are so reliant on this textbook or this manual or something that we don't actually use our brain to think, if I didn't have that, could I figure out how to make this? And half the time you can figure out basically how to make it. It's funny whenever I'm somewhere and I see a sweater, someone sitting in front of me with a really nice one, I'm sitting there going, oh yes, I think I can make that. We need to use our brain. Don't forget to trust your brain first on how to do something, rather than going straight to the instructions and being totally going blind in faith. Okay? So yeah, just looking at that sweater, it's just a block sweater. It's just a rectangle, and so there's the Wool of Games. I don't know if any of you have seen that. It's a new series where they're all hand knitters, but they give them challenges each week. And they don't give them a pattern or anything. They just say, I want you to create this. So of course they just have to get a piece of paper out and draw a schematic and do it. So they're using their brain creativity to create their thing. And a lot of the younger ones these days do that. They can't even write a pattern or anything. They just have it in their head and they create it. So we all have that ability. It's just the more we use it, the more it will get better. And on my schematics, I will write lots of notes at first, and so that's okay, but that's one pattern. That's like all I would need. I don't need all the written patterns, all the written things. I have them if I need to refer to them, but generally I teach you how to understand to read a pattern. Now a hung hem, this is just a tip from one of our attendees, is a hung hem or a mock hem, you're folding it. So you want it 10 rows deep. Well, you have to do 20 rows and then hang it. So on row 10, you can increase your tension all the way to 10. So it's a really big tension because that's where this fold is going to be. And it just kind of helps it lay flatter. So that's just a tip on hung hems. This is the V-neck sweater. This is my favorite V-neck sweater. Here from my armpit up is when I do that anti-roll edge, and it just basically is a cap sleeve. It just hangs over. So there is no sleeve on this sweater. Very simple. So I'll probably do that too in the next probably 2 weeks time. And it does the V-neck. So we learned about V-necks and the different angles depending on how often you it involves a simple 1-stitch increase. So if you decrease every other row, it's quite a steep neckline. If you do it every row, then it's more slighter and gradual. Okay, so just showing you this picture. That's every other row. That's every row. So it just depends on what shape you want your neckline to be. And then we talked about the different types of rib. So this is your traditional 1x1 rib that most people use a ribber for, that we do this in a mock rib. But then there's also 2x2, 2x1, 3x1, all different ones. I prefer this type of look. Just to me makes it look a bit more store-bought. But it just depends on what you're making as what you would do. Another idea as you're practicing, rather than making a sweater for you, get a little doll. Now this doll particularly has human proportions. She's an American doll, Minnie Mia, or Wellie Wisher. So I made a little thing. I was practicing something on the ribber to make a top. First time I'd used the ribber and the main bed to make something together other than just a rib. And so I made it to fit her. So you can see here, here's a photo. So once you have it fit that doll, it's not taking you a lot of time. It's not taking a lot of yarn. You're learning how to do it before you do it on you and using lots of yarn and maybe end up frogging it many times. So that's just an idea that you can do. Then the next ones were socks. This is sew as you go socks. And the thing with the socks that I teach, so you go down, you start up at the hem and we knit down to the heel. This is then short rowing. Do you see? It's a shape, so we short row. Then we continue to knit, and then again, a shape, we short row. When you are knitting the top part of the sock, this is the bottom, this is the top, we are going to sew the foot at the same time as sewing it and seaming it to this side. So it's sewing as you knit, basically, so as you go. And so we go up and do that. And the trick and tip that I teach is to use bobby pins, because at a certain point, once you get down to here, you have to start picking up every row to sew it together. And it's really hard, especially when you're first starting to know what to pick up. So as you're going down and doing stitches, initially you're hanging a bobby pin on each stitch. You're putting a bobby pin in it, so when it's time to come back up, you just pick up that bobby pin. It's on the right row, it's on the right stitch, and you just hang it and you're sewing as you go. So that's a really fun one, a good lesson that we have, and that's in the online course. We also have a sock one, which I'm going to teach once we get into ribbers, which is a 35-cent sock. And 35 cents meaning 35 pennies is used as a weight inside the toe once you get that part knitted. And it's done in circular. So hence why you're using the ribber. So there's no seaming up. Once you're done, you're done. You're sewing circular as you go. Okay, and then one of the favorite ones is the top-down raglan sweater. So this is Carolyn. This was day 2. I had just met her. I was going to her in-person class, plus you can see the thing on the back. She had people on Zoom there as well. So she was teaching people in the room as well as on Zoom. And I was lucky to be there for a couple classes, and then I continued on Zoom. This was the raglan sweater that we made it was day 2 of me knitting, and we made that in like 4 hours. That was me doing it the first time. So this is my sweater. So then I came home and she had some tutorials, video tutorials. I just followed them and knitted some more for my grandsons. I have that on my online course. I have the tutorials. We did basically one section at a time over 4 weeks. So 1 week we did the neckband, and then I had everyone knit like 3 or 4 neckbands, Then the next week I taught the back. So we start with the neckband. We then make some markings so we know these stitches are for the back. Then we hang those and we knit the back. Then we hang these ones off the neckband and we knit the front, and then we do the left sleeve and the right sleeve. And then all we have to do is seam it here. There is no raglan seams. That's where that sample increase comes in. This is the pattern. Okay, so when I make this sweater, that's all I need. And I teach you to understand how to read this. Yeah, plus you have quite an in-depth written one in kind of dot form. I kind of color code things in my written pattern, so it's really designed for the beginner or the dummy like me. And I did it too so that if I don't do this sweater for a long time, and if I look at this and think, oh, I can't remember, I can look at the written pattern and know what it meant. So this is the neckline that you do first, and then you scrap it off on waste yarn. Then we mark all the different sections. So one might be the back, one's a sleeve, one's a front, one's a sleeve. And so those are the stitches we're rehanging each time we do that section. It is a cool, really fun sweater to make. And yeah, again, I teach you kind of how to read that. This is the front, okay? The front, we start out with some short rowing, which I'll show you in a second. Most round neck sweaters have short rowing up here. Then we increase with our simple increases. Then we add 3 stitches at once on one row, where we use like a little I-cord to do that. And so this is a sleeve. So when I'm knitting the sleeve, I start up here, right up here, and I do some short rows. You can see this little shape here. I do these short rows, and then I continue to sew it to the front and the back at the same time. So I'm knitting the sleeve while I'm sewing it to the front and the back because of these magic loops, single increases. Okay, so it's a really, really fun, my favorite sweater to knit. Okay, here's some of them that some of our attendees did in January. Again, I told them to do 3 to 4, so they can practice each step so that they can master it. Okay, so there again, there is the schematic. And they did all a child sweater. Then I went through the schematic and taught them how to read it again. This is for actually the cardigan. So this is a cardigan. Similar, but we have 2 fronts. Okay, and then there's the cardigan with a 2x1 rib and buttonhole. This is one of the students made a little cardigan, and then she actually made this for herself because she learned through the written pattern as well as my tutorials and recordings. She knew, oh, I can just, because there's all the sizes that you get access to, up to a size 46 for men. She did this sweater for her. She knew how to do cables. We've taught cables, and she just added some pockets, and there's like a 3x1 rib. And so, yeah, and she had never made a sweater before. Then we did pants. So we just finished doing pants. So I love to wear knitwear. I love the feel of knit, especially cotton. So these are one of the first pair I made. They're what you would call a wide leg. There is no decreasing or anything in the leg. They were a bit long. I was still kind of learning. And then that's a V-neck sweater that I made that had a picot hem. So that's a wide leg, basically the width of the circumference of your hip, whatever measurement that is, that's basically how it was. There was no decreasing. That one has a little bit of decreasing. Again, this is the Carolyn pants because I made it in purple, and that's the one that I named after her. This is my inspiration. I think these are cute. This is Carolyn Moore. She's quite often and this is on the LK150. I really love that fun lounge around type of stuff. And so I did that, and I made one for my granddaughter. Now this is another one, pants that are in there that is actually a pattern. You just follow the pattern. They recommend to use cotton, which I did. You can notice that the back is higher than the front, because that's it. When you look at your pants, that back is higher than the front. It's not as simple as just adding more stitches on the back, more rows. That doesn't work. This is what happens if you do that. I thought that was the solution, and it's not, so I had to actually roll up things, and so I had one leg longer than the other. But that involves short rowing, which is basically in this area just underneath the back waistband. There again, there's our little monster. So you can have a straight leg, you can have leggings. These are the pair that I just made a few weeks ago. This is the 2-panel. Now the 2-panel will fit up to probably a 12 to 14, because you only have so many needles on your machine. You can't, the widest part of your pants, which for the 2-panel is a whole leg, it's the front and the back of the leg, and it meets the crotch. There's only so many needles on your machine, so you can only to a certain size. Then after that you go to a 4-panel. Okay, so this is a 4-panel, even though she's little. There's a front, a back, a front, and a back, where the 2-panel goes all the way around and meets in the crotch again. So there is no side seam. So if you're over than that and you want just some baggy pants, then lounge pants, then you would go 4 panels instead of 2. So I have both of those my patterns, and those patterns come with a worksheet to calculate. You first have to get your gauge. You calculate how many stitches and rows per inch, and then it has you, let's see here, you fill in your body measurements. It tells you how to fill in your body measurements, which ones you need, and then it has a page for calculating. So you're just going to put in certain numbers that you took from here, as well as your gauge, and you will just work it through, and it will tell you you know, how many increases you need to get. You know, if you're here, see, this is going higher, how many increases to here. For your short rowing, which is underneath the waistband of your back, it will help you calculate all of that. Okay, so that's really helpful. That's all part of the pattern, plus it has the schematic, which you then take all this information and you put it on your schematic. So it's for any size. Okay, so leg shaping, the last thing, which was something new I was just going to talk about. So there's different types of legs for pants. We have the straight leg, which is basically what my pattern is. But then you can easily use it into a skinny by just starting with less stitches, because we're going from the bottom up. You would just cast on a lot less stitches and gradually go up. There is the or the tapered, the wide. There is no increasing or decreasing. It's just, you know, big. Then there's the flared, and with the flared, basically the only difference is normally I would have, say, 50 stitches I cast on here. I would just add another 7 each side initially, and then I will taper it. So that is what a 4-panel kind of looks like. Here's one for a flared. So imagine this is the hem of a straight leg pant. You're just going to actually add on 7 stitches more each side, knit a few rows, and then you'll slowly start to crease, and that gives that little flare. And flared ones from I hear are getting becoming popular, so we can be ahead of the game. Okay, so that is what we've learned so far. In the future, I have Design It, which is a software program which you can design, and Stitch Designer, and interactive, meaning you have your laptop next to your machine. And it doesn't have to be an electronic machine. This isn't. And there's a little plug that plugs to your machine. Let me just show you a picture. Here I am. Here's the computer. Here's a little cord that is going around, and it's this little magnet thing that sits up there. And then there's a magnet thing on your carriage. So every time you go back and it goes like a row counter, it knows you're on row so-and-so. And the machine is actually telling you what to do every row. It's pretty cool. And it talks to you. Now, increase two stitches on the right side. You know, it tells you what to do. And if you're doing a pattern like this, it will tell you, okay, now time to change yarns you need to do. So it's pretty cool. I'm still a very beginner at it. But once I get better at it, and at least a little bit better, then I will probably do a workshop just to give you a look and you can see how it works live. And then all my patterns that I do, all my schematics, I use Inkscape. So I'll probably do a week on that one, just so that if you want to create your own little schematics. Now, most of my schematics I just did on paper, on grid paper. But when I'm teaching now and I want to, make it look a bit more professional, I use Inkscape for that. It's just a free program. Okay. So, I know that was a lot of talking today. That was a lot of listening ears. You guys did very well. Again, usually I'm, for half of the time at least or more, I'm on the machine. And I have a camera here demonstrating what I'm doing. And so next week, that's what it will be. We'll be back to that. So I would just love to hear any things that you thought, ooh, I like that, or any thoughts that you have on what you've learned today. And raise your hand if you want to start out. If you don't want to, that's fine. But who would love to start and just share your thoughts? And we'll start with Marjorie.
I like the bobby pin trick.
Oh, yes. It looks like a porcupine.
I'm getting myself a bobby pin soon.
Yeah, it looks like a porcupine when you're knitting at first, but boy, and it's kind of like its own little tool. Each one has its own little single tool because that's kind of like a bobby pin to hang. So it's really cool.
It sounds like a nuisance, but I've had such trouble keeping track of the sew-as-you-go things.
I mean, I don't need the bobby pins necessarily now because I know what it looks like and what I'm supposed to pick up. But when you're beginning, yes, it takes a little bit longer because every stitch, every row, you're putting in a couple bobby pins. But hey, it turns out, and they're quick anyway. So I'm glad you like that. You'll have to try that. Excellent. Well, thank you. Okay, Manon. Did I sit there?
Thank you. So I'm just impressed overall with the type of things that can be done on a machine. It seems like, it's borderless, whereas I always thought it was for things like blankets and maybe scarves and more like squares. So this is amazing. Thank you so much for the demo. I've learned a lot, and my machine is not even out of the box. So thank you.
Good, lovely. And there is videos. In my course, I have videos setting up certain machines, but generally they all set up the same way. And I always say to people, if you're really nervous, give me a call. If you see me online, I'll be there on the other end just to kind of hold your hand, say, you can do it. I know anytime I try a new technique, I procrastinate. And sometimes
don't do it with good yarn.
Don't do it with good yarn. Yeah, you use the cheapest stuff, but I still use the cheapest stuff now. I do have some like mohair and some nice stuff in there, but I still don't feel that I'm qualified to use that yet. And just use your cheap yarn and just have courage and get in there and set those things up, because it's not, when you do it, you'll think, why did I wait so long? So I'm glad that you saw what it can do, and lots of fun things to do on a knitting machine. And that's just a few things that I teach, because like I say, I teach very basic things. There's lots of advanced things, but I don't even get into those because you can't run before you walk, before you crawl. I teach you to crawl. Once you learn the basics, then some of those other groups where they have workshops once a month, and boy, they go over my head. But if you really get good, you can listen to those. But I just like to focus on beginners because you guys, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. And I know today I showed lots of things. You don't have to remember any of it. The only thing you need to remember is, did it inspire you to get to your machine and do something? Even if it's that soap sack. That soap sack is the easiest thing. Like I said, you don't have to put soap in it. You can put nuts and bolts in it. It doesn't matter. Just, it's a really quick and easy thing. And also, if you haven't knitted for a while, that's a great thing to get your confidence up, is to use that. So thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Mildred. It's so good to see you. You're beautiful. Oh, I'm glad that you enjoyed that. Okay, and Greg.
Look, I'd again say the range of things to do. I again thought it was mostly just two-dimensional things, but the fact that you can sew up as you're going along. I mean, all of us love creating a whole lot of knitted pieces and then having to sew them up, don't we?
Oh, right.
Yes. So to do it as you go, I think, I'll get the machines out and get them working.
Just start simple. Like say, start with that soap sack, and like I said, the course is very low cost, and there's no contracts, and so you can take it one step at a time, because I want you to have success. If you go straight to doing some YouTube sweater that you see that they say is beginner, and I tell you it's not, you will be overwhelmed. So learning those basic techniques, and it doesn't take long, but you need to do first things first. So thank you, and thank you for coming, Greg. That's my husband's name. Okay, Bryn, how did you go?
Yeah, there were a lot of aha moments for me too. I'm looking forward to it. I don't think that I'm going to dig into it right away. I have my knitting schedule is really full right now, but I can see this summer when things slow down, I'll definitely gonna sign up and start from the beginning. So, yep.
Good. And the thing is if I have a day where I don't get lots done, and I just come in here for a couple hours, man, I can make, I didn't show you, and I'll have to show you, but I made a pair of pants. It's just so fast to make things, and so you feel accomplished when you go to bed. If everything
These are my panels. I'm making a cardigan on my circular machine. I've got the front and back's done, and the idea of mattress stitching all of these is like,
I know.
I've had them done for over a week, and it's just like,
Yes,
so.
I made a cardigan bottom up, like traditionally, like I teach top down. And I did one. I thought, I'm going to try it because that's how everybody else does it. It got to the mattress stitching, and because they weren't virgin stitches on the ends of the raglan, I just frogged it. I thought, blow it, I'll go to my top down. So much easier. And with the circulars, I have sweaters and cardigans that I made in my circulars. The reason I went to the flatbed is you are limited to so many needles. And yes, it did fit me, the sweater, but it was a tight, snug sweater. I want big blousey sweaters, so that's why I knew I had to go to a flatbed. So that's good. I'm glad
this is one of the classes I'm teaching in August, and that's why I have to have everything done before I can start with my flatbed. But you're right. It's just in panels on the circular knitting machine, you're definitely limited on how many stitches wide you can go, and
they're easier
so
than
you do have a lot
think.
of steaming.
People have a lot of trouble with panels, and I'm thinking they were so easy.
Oh yeah.
In
the circular, not so much, but I mean, for me, they're a piece of cake. But the last time I teach panels, I had 0 success rate out of my students. I don't know what they weren't getting. So if they're not understanding it, and this, it's something you're not doing. You're not teaching right. So
exactly. And with my online course in most of the units, there's a comment place there. So if I didn't explain it well enough, then I want people to comment because, I mean, I do everything. I do all
Makes
my
you
social
better.
media. I do everything, and I want it to. If I can't help someone who's new, then who's going to help them? Because other groups,
Exactly.
they speak over your head in terms.
Exactly.
So I keep it simple. So I always love that feedback. So thank you, Bryn. I'm so glad that you were
I'm very
able to come.
encouraged. So yeah, I'm very encouraged.
Good.
Thank you.
Jessie.
Hi there.
Hi.
I am very new to the flatbed knitting. I have been following your group along with several others, and I like how detailed your information is. I I have some limitations. I'm actually hand knitting some projects right now. But I purchased a KX 350 and have done blankets and washcloths and some socks and hats, and it's been so much fun. I did find a standard Empisal. I don't remember the model offhand. Um, and it does have a ribber, but I've not been able to set that up yet due to my limitations. So I'm really excited to start to learn. I think I started more than walking instead of crawling, and I want to go back to crawling and
Yes.
start over.
Exactly. And when it comes to that ribber, do not put that ribber on.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, that is
it was
advanced to use a ribber, or that's the walking more running. So as
right.
you're learning, keep that ribber off because one, if you put that ribber on, it only drops so much. You only see what you're knitting that much, even though there's a lot more. So it's just so master your main single bed first, then you can get to the ribber.
Yes, the ribber is still in the box.
That's why we do mock rib because we don't really need to. We can just do mock rib, the hung hams.
Right.
Stuff. So, I'm glad.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And yes, see, I've done 2 blankets early on, but to me that was boring. It's like, okay, that's rarely when I'd put on the '80s music to kind of keep going. And I don't do scarves because we don't need scarves in Australia, or at least where I live. And beanies, sadly, we don't need beanies either. And so for me, I had to
I do.
Thing. You do, yes, you do. I wish I had a bit more. My husband just said this morning, my husband Greg said, why do people live in cold countries? And I thought, well, one, they get seasons. And 2, they can wear sweaters, lots of sweaters. I make all these sweaters and I'm limited. In fact, most of them I take back home to my parents in Utah, where they're up in the Rocky Mountains, and I can wear them there. And I have machines there as well that I bought so that when I'm there I can knit.